Hey guys, I just wanted to say you should all check out Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated series on Disney+. Enjoy the show.
That's it, TJ. You're not going to say anything about systematic ecology or new podcast? Nothing? Just watch Clone Wars?
Well, if you insist, after you watch The Clone Wars, or before, I guess, you should listen to our new podcast, Systematic Geekology, to hear both of us and Joe D talk about the show from a Christian perspective. I assume it'll take you until at least October 7th to watch the whole series, so that's when that episode comes out. So, look for that.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you could go to systematicgeekology.org, all one word, to find out more or to subscribe to the show for free so you don't miss the launch date.
Yeah, and if you want to, you can listen to the first 4 to 6 episodes early by subscribing to our new Patreon account, patreon.com/systematic geekology. Check that out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our episode about the Clone Wars, Joe, and a few other episodes with several other hosts talking about geek stuff and faith will be available too. They can also find the link to our Patreon account you mentioned on our website.
You mean systematicgeekology.org?
Yeah. We probably said that enough times, right? Don't remember.
Probably.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast, your favorite church unity podcast. I am here because of patrons like you. Yeah, we really appreciate all of our patrons over there on Patreon. You guys are the best. And as always, I am joined by our lovely co-host, TJ Tiberius One Blackwell. He has a last name. I do know that. Yeah. And today we are joined by another return guest. You guys hopefully remember him quite fondly. Jake Doberenz? Man, I think I got it right the first time on the last episode, and then I decided to mess it up today because, you can't keep that streak going. That wouldn't be good. Jake is the founder of Theophany Media. We're going to be talking to him about all kinds of stuff they're up to. His podcast, The Bible But Funnier, as well as another podcast Theophany Media oversees, The Creatively Christian. But before we do, as always, we like to review some of our audience engagement. And today's it was kind of a fun one. I asked the Mundane Monday question, thinking that we wouldn't get a ton of responses. And it was just, hey, what's a small talk question you hate? And we did, in fact, get a ton of responses. And I just wanted to share a few. So, what is your favorite color? Got 1 vote. Where are you from? Got 1 vote. What do you do? Got 2 votes. Tell me about yourself. Got 2 votes. And that one is quite annoying. And then, of course, with a strong 6 votes, far in the lead, we have how are you? Turns out no one likes being asked that. Yeah. And in fact, Jake told us that like 4 different times. He wanted to make sure we knew that he did not like that.
We've been in a pandemic for like a year and a half. Bad.
That's how we are.
I'm bad. We're all bad.
Oh, man. So that being said, our favorite form of unity is silliness. And by our, I mean my, because I just like being silly, and it's hard for people to argue when you're asking dumb questions. So we like to start with a silly question. And Jake, we'll answer first, give you time to think about it. Other than dancing, what is something silly you would like to see a giant lobster do? TJ, would you like to answer this one first?
Sure, but I got to know how giant we're talking.
Thank the Amanda Bynes Show.
I got to know how.
They're not like giant, like human size.
Okay.
Human size.
So giant for a lobster, but not like.
Yeah.
I would say like probably juggle. Maybe do the crab dance.
That would be funny. Mine is honestly, well, that was sort of mine. Mine's really not that good. I just can't get the image out of my head of a human-sized lobster bowling, so I'm going to go with bowling. Jake, what's something you'd like to see other than dancing a human-sized lobster do?
Okay. My first thought was accounting. So just imagine this. You got this human-sized lobster, little tie, hunched over at this desk, trying to put the numbers in the right boxes. And I think that would be quite humorous and be the first time accounting or some kind of office work like that would be interesting. First time.
Yeah. And what would be better is if you were completely unaware, like you were just going to someone's office and you just turned the corner and there's that lobster doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That would make it, especially funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would implore everyone to look up the traditional Japanese keyboard, though. If you think accounting could never be interesting, because the old ones were just like 10 different keyboards wired together. Because they had to have, they had to have a button for each stroke, and they had to put them all together. But that's not what this show is about. It's been a while since you've been on our show last. How have you been? What's been going on?
Did you just ask one of those?
Nope.
One of those small talk questions that I like. Well. Just like
what's been going on is distinctly different from how are you?
Right. Just like how to answer in real life. I will silently judge you for your question, and then I'll try to launch into an interesting fact. I've been keeping busy with lots of different things. More recently, I started a job at my alma mater at the university I got my bachelor's and master's degree in, and I'm the resident director of one of the dorms here, specifically the honors dorms with the honors kids. I was in the honors program, and there's more than just honors kids, but that's sort of the vibe around here. It's been entertaining to say the least. School getting started and people having a little bit more freedom than they've had. If you think about it, a lot of these freshmen didn't have a senior year of high school. And now they're like, they have the freedom of college on top of the freedom of like, oh, I can like leave my house and that's cool and stuff. So, yeah.
Right.
Last time, that's true.
Last time you were on, we mostly talked about your podcast, The Bible But Funnier. How has that show been going?
Yes. Sorry to break the news to you on air, but it kind of died. A peaceful death.
Sad.
Quickly in its sleep kind of thing. And that was mostly due to my own negligence. There were some people that really liked it, and I got a lot of positive feedback. I never got any negative feedback. But for me, it was just a lot of work. Surprisingly, for 15-minute episodes, there's a lot of editing and writing and sound effects and things that went into that. And it just wasn't ultimately worth my time. And creating that each week kind of got a little bit stressful. So, maybe dead isn't the right way. It's just asleep for a extended period of time until I figure out what to do with that. I hope to co-opt the stories, maybe do a short story collection, something like that. Because I still think the content's good, but just that sort of audio storytelling format is a challenge. Just from an editing perspective, from a marketing perspective. I mean, statistics continue to show like people listen to podcasts mostly for education. There's not a lot of popularity in, storytelling podcasts, specifically my super niche of humorous retelling the Bible stories. So,
right.
Yeah. So there you go. That has changed since last episode. There's still several episodes. It's, I'm still paying for hosting, and those can all be listened to. But The Bible But Funnier is effectively on permanent hiatus. Yeah.
We like to say indefinite. It just it leaves that hope in there, even though it means the same thing.
Sure. There you go.
That's pretty accurate.
Because there are a ton of manga artists who are on indefinite hiatus, but then they come back and they release a new chapter, and then they go back on indefinite hiatus. So.
Right.
Marvel does a lot of things indefinite. They usually last about a year or two. Yeah.
So
Marvel's
we'll
not great at it.
A short stories collection, though.
Sure, yeah.
Josh?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask him the favorite
No.
episode thing still. The favorite episode was the one that was released on May 3rd. It was great.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just skip ahead then, I guess. So, yeah, again, also last time you were on the show, you were almost ready to launch Creatively Christian, another podcast with Theophany Media. I don't think it quite came out yet. Obviously, since then, it has been launched because I listened to it. And, we share stuff on Twitter. What can you tell us about the progress that show's made and some about it for those who might be unfamiliar with what it is?
Yeah, we launched Creatively Christian in January of 2021, and I think I was on the show last, or it came out somewhere like November, December of last year. So yeah, it was just about to come out. So yeah, Creatively Christian is out to the world. We are a little over 30 episodes in with that show. And it's been really fun. I take a backseat role, but I am really passionate about, getting that word out there, and the hosts are awesome. And, they have interviewed some really interesting people that I just wouldn't have ever found or thought about. So we've had just people all over the creative spectrum, and we've kind of, we define creativity a little bit loosely, which I think is good. And we've had dancers, and we just had a documentary filmmaker, and artists and writers, and we've got to have some really engaging discussions, some difficult discussions about art and faith, and I think it's blessed people, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback. I don't know. I don't think we've gotten any like hate mail or anything like that. I don't know if that's the sign of like you've made it once you get like hate mail. So I don't know.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Hate mail, just so we can kind of get that feeling.
Sure.
I sent it to Josh's old address so we don't actually have to read it, because there is some horrible stuff in there. But you aren't one of the... Oh, go ahead.
I was like, who was the one comics writer that they had on Creatively Christian? That's what I was trying to think of. There was one I want to say fairly well-known comics writer.
We've had several comic writers on there, so you'd have to be a little more specific.
I don't remember exactly what he did. I just remember I looked up his comics and they were funny.
Yeah, that's
not helpful.
Christian comic writers is probably the biggest category we've had on the show, because two of our hosts, Brandon Hollingsworth and Bill. Sorry, Bill, I just forgot your last name. He's on all the socials as Artsy Bible Nerd, so that's what I see the most. He's Artsy Bible Nerd. Anyway, they're comic writers, they're comic creators, so they interview a lot of creators, and you'd be surprised at how prolific the Christian comic book world is, or Christians who just write comics as well.
Right. So you mentioned it yourself. You aren't one of the regular hosts, but you are active behind the scenes. Could you give us a little rundown of who the hosts are and what they each bring to the show?
Yeah, the reason I did this format of having these four hosts that kind of rotate, and then I took a back seat. I don't actually remember why it ended up that I took a back seat. I think in the original draft I was going to be a part of it, but our hosts are experienced in diverse areas, and their experiences and trainings and connections bring a lot of value to the show. So our anchor host is Brandon Hollingsworth. He's the CCO, I think, of Brainy Pixel, which is a Christian animation company, but they also do tons of other stuff, Christian comics and different Christian products and stuff like that. So he's the anchor host in the sense of you typically hear his voice the first thing on the episode, and he introduces the guest. And so he has a lot of connections. He's been doing a lot of connections in the film world. And so that's been really cool to see. We have Lynn Baber. She is, she's a nonfiction writer, and a speaker and coach. She doesn't necessarily fit what we kind of typically think of creativity, which is normally like fiction or stories or something. But she brings a wealth of information, and from sort of the nonfiction storytelling side, because she has a lot of books that utilize stories and real world experiences in creative ways, even if it's not quote unquote fiction. So that's been really beneficial. And then we have Andrea Sandifer. Andrea is a musician, a singer-songwriter, piano player, and she helps out at her church with sort of a arts ministry, which I think is super cool, and I'd love to do something similar at my church, where I think it's like every quarter they have some kind of artistic showcase in their church where people can display their art and sing and dance and whatever they do that's creative and artistic, can kind of showcase that. So she's been in charge of that and loves fostering creativity in the church community. And then lastly, we have Bill, who I mentioned earlier, who I feel so terrible that I've forgotten his last name. But Bill is awesome, and he is a budding comic writer and a musician himself, too. Most of our hosts kind of they do a lot of different kind of creative things. That's something we celebrate a lot on the show. So maybe a little more than you wanted, but those are the hosts, and then I'm in the background supporting them, editing episodes and marketing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's useful. Anybody who wants to check out that show can kind of know who they're listening to. As far as you mentioned nonfiction works, one of my favorite stories is storybooks. It's Empire Blue Water. It's considered nonfiction, but because it's a pirate book, a lot of the history isn't quite there. So they kind of do some creative fill in the gaps, and I guess I personally see nonfiction as super creative in its own right.
Right.
Yeah, there is a genre, I suppose, called creative nonfiction. Like that is something that is a specific market, a specific type of thing.
Right. I think it's a lot more harder to be creative writing nonfiction, but it is therefore a much harder skill to develop. It's really impressive when someone can do that. Theophany. You say wait?
I was just agreeing with you. I said, oh yeah.
So Theophany Media has started a good many other things as well this year. What can you tell us about the blogs and courses you guys have started?
Yeah, first of all, I want to jump back in and say Bill Brooks is that other host. Sorry, Bill, if you're listening. So yeah, back to what you're saying, TJ. Yeah, we've expanded a lot. 2021 has kind of been the year of, well, maybe we should make this financially, sustainable, and let's see what we can do to really support. 2020 was mostly like, let's cheerlead people on social media. And then 2021 was, let's get more serious. Let's talk to these more serious creatives who want help. So yeah, we've tried to put out some blog posts and things. I'm not very consistent on the blogging front. We had a devotional book for Christian creatives come out. We can talk about that a little bit later. I put out some courses about building an author website. And we had a whole summit about email marketing, which is a really fun topic. Well, we made it fun at least. And then we have a membership for fiction writers who are Christian, the Christian Storytellers Club. We meet weekly and talk to experts and get to know each other and keep each other accountable. That's a big thing. So, yeah, we've rolled out a lot of things, and they've all been exciting, varying degrees of success. But we're really trying to live into this sort of refined mission, if you will, of the company. Originally, Theophany Media was more like my umbrella for all the fun, creative stuff I wanted to do. And it's really become something that is a community effort. And we're trying to put the pulse on, feel the pulse of what do people need? How can we support people? And community and help and accountability has been some of those big things. So we've been trying to do that, trying to help people succeed, both financially, but just in their general creative life. We attract all kinds of people. Some people are fine with doing a little comic on the side and being fun. Other people are like, that'd be really cool. That was my main job. We just want to support them and help them. So we really refined our mission into supporting people and helping them, giving them a path in sort of this unique space of art and faith, and also that sort of career aspect. I love the theology side of things. How does your theology inform your art? Those are fun topics for me, but a lot of people have more practical concerns like, okay, but how do I build a website that actually benefits people and, can promote my work, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to deal with all those different facets of faith and art.
All right. If anybody's listening and needs help, Theophany Media, there you go. I think you could just Google it and their website will come up, actually, because I've done
Hopefully.
that.
Hey guys, we just wanted to tell you a few of the ways that you can support us, the Whole Church Podcast, your favorite church unity podcast.
Yeah, so you can subscribe to our show on wherever good podcasts are found. You can rate our show on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. You can sign up for our newsletter using either our website or by emailing us at thewholechurch@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can share this episode on your own social media accounts. You can donate to our Cashapp using the tag down below in the show notes, or you can sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/thewholechurchpodcast.
Yeah, especially that last one.
TJ, you always say that.
Perhaps I was told to say that. However, it's especially true for Patreon. You get access to a bunch of bonus stuff we do. You support us. We have a lot of goals to reach. It's kind of a great way to support the show.
All right. Let's get back to it then.
Yeah.
So now is later. You mentioned a devotional book that you guys had put out by Alexandra Davis for Christian creatives. What can you tell us about?
Yeah, so Alex started as one of our regular bloggers. We actually connected because she originally applied to be one of the Creatively Christian podcast hosts. And I turned her down, but still kept that relationship, which is always a good lesson for people. Like, one no could lead to multiple yeses later. And so we kept that relationship up. I said, you want to submit some blog posts? And then she sends me 30 blog posts. That's only a slight exaggeration. She's a really prolific writer. Writing comes so easy for her. She just pumps stuff out. And eventually I said, we could do a book, a devotional book. And she's like, sounds good. And again, literally 3 weeks later, it was done. So it was quicker for her to write than it was for me to edit and format and all that fun stuff. So Born to Create, a 7-week devotional for creative Christians is that book. It's uniquely designed for people who do want that. I mentioned earlier, that sort of theological reflection on our creativity. What does it mean to write as a Christian or to paint as a Christian? And because it's a devotional, we don't get into the nitty gritty, the systematic theology of art. Maybe a future book, but it's devotional levels designed where you could read one devotional in the morning and just reflect on that through your day and then the art that you create. So it's been pretty good. There's been some good positive feedback from that. It was a fun project, although very hard to, do all the work in publishing a book. So
Right.
there you go.
Yeah, I hear that's sort of tough.
Yeah.
You'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Personally,
Yeah.
the application process to be the host of the Whole Church podcast was very rigorous. I had to listen to Josh ask me to be on the show for like 2 months.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
but it worked.
Exactly.
the whole thing.
Yeah. So with everything going on with Theophany Media you were just talking about, when people talk to you about it, what's one thing you really hope they ask you about?
How can I give you boatloads of money? No, just kidding. Actually, not really.
I keep waiting just in general for people to ask me that.
I know.
My boss
why don't
asked
people
me
ask me that? Exactly. Yeah.
Just skip the question. However you want to do it.
You guys know as creators, as podcast hosts and podcast producers, that sometimes you're just waiting for people to ask, like, how can I help? And honestly, I have a list. I have some ways you can help, and a lot of them are like really simple, like leave a review for the show. It takes you 4 seconds. Maybe a little bit more.
Speaking of which, do that. Go to Podchaser right now. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, and stuff like that. This is like low hanging fruit, but a lot of people don't do it. And so I would love for people to say, how can I help? How can I support? Especially because my personality is, I'm an innovator and a futurist, and I have all these ideas and stuff. And what happens more times than I can count is that I get overwhelmed. And I would love for somebody to say, how can I help? What can I do? Because this is a ministry obviously I care about deeply, and I pour my heart and soul into that, but that's not always good for self-care and things like that. And I'm always looking for partners, for other people to engage with. Do you have a blog post? Let's go. Do you have a book idea? We'll talk about it. See what the market says about that. But I would just love for people to ask, how can I help? So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you meant. I don't know.
So with that, just curious, because I know, especially since both of us are part of the Christian Podcast Association on Facebook, and I'm sure some of them are listening. What are some ways that you found useful that does help get people to do the simple stuff? Share something on Facebook, go to Podchaser, whatever it may be. Have you found anything that's really good at getting people to want to help in those small ways?
Yeah. When we launched Creatively Christian, we tried to do like a special launch week. And the idea was for every review or share of the podcast, you get entered into a daily drawing to get some free stuff. And that worked okay. It definitely probably moved the needle more than if I didn't offer some kind of incentive. But it worked a little bit, at least initially, to kind of get those reviews and get those shares up at the beginning. But it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get people to click, hit retweet or to spend 4 seconds to do a podcast review. And some people have legitimate reasons. I listen to podcasts a lot when I'm driving or doing the dishes or something where my hands are. So yeah, I get that. So yeah, there is not really a great answer to that question. The one thing I would say though is sometimes I'll see a review of the show, either on social media or on one of those review apps. And it's the kind of person who I have engaged with on social media. And we've, essentially built this virtual digital relationship. And they'll say, I've been listening to the show for weeks now. This is my favorite episode. And it's not a complete stranger. It's somebody that has followed us on social media and we've talked and engaged with. And when they make a comment, I reply, and it's that kind of thing. So, it takes that initial person to make an effort. But once you see somebody make that little bit of an effort, keep the ball rolling. Build community. Be friends here, because whether you know them in real life or not, ultimately, when you have a personal connection with a show, when, like, if you've been on a podcast, for instance, although trust me, not all of my guests share my show, but in general, you have this sort of ownership, right? And so you want to share, you want to help, you want to do something like that. So any way you can create community or a sense of ownership where they feel like they're a part of the thing, I think that always helps.
Yeah, for sure. Which, community sort of big deal for us, the Whole Church podcast,
That's
the whole
right.
unity thing. You can't have it without community. Yeah.
So do you have any qualifiers for creative work you endorse? Like, are there any denominations you keep out, or how do you prevent heretical work from slipping in? Yeah, who do you exclude?
Well, it's probably, it's probably heretical to say that I don't care as much about heresy as maybe some other gatekeeping types. If you're saying something against the Apostles' Creed or something like one of those really basic kind of things, we probably got a problem. But otherwise, I'm really open to diverse ideas, and hearing different sides of the story, as I know you guys are, because you guys go all over the place on this podcast. And it's sometimes I'm like, wait, what do they believe? I don't know, because they're engaging with all sorts of people. So I try not to put qualifiers on that kind of art. I've even, I wrote an article. It was a blog post on my personal website, jakedoberenz.com, probably a couple years ago, about the show Good Omens, the Neil Gaiman show. And
David Tennant. Good show.
Yeah, it is a good show.
Season 2 is coming soon.
And I engaged with, we'll see what I do with that. I engaged with this idea of, like, it's, in one sense, it's a heretical show to Christian eschatology and Christian worldview.
Yes.
It doesn't map up with the Bible. Not that I think mapping up anything with Revelation really makes sense ever, but anyway, so in this article, I engage with that idea and say, you know what? Heresy can actually teach us some really good things sometimes. Indulging in these shows, indulging might not be the best word, but engaging with the shows, hearing what they have to say can teach us some really good things. And I mentioned some other shows too, but Good Omens specifically, it challenges certain notions of what is good and what is evil that I think deserve to be challenged. God was played by a female, and that challenges us to think about God's gender, which God doesn't really have a gender. So, even if those male pronouns are used in the scripture, God doesn't have genitalia and that whole thing, right? So sometimes heresy, quote unquote, can help us engage with some things. We call things heresy. That's really just, my tradition doesn't like that for some reason, so I'm not even going to bother.
Right. No, some things are actually heresy. Naturally, if you're saying Jesus is really Satan, I mean that's heresy. Don't do that.
Right.
But a couple things with that. One being, if anyone's read the Sherlock Holmes books, Sherlock intentionally read things that were bad logic, because that shows me what good logic is, because it's not that. He just intentionally read stupid stuff just because he wanted to know what was stupid. And I can't remember what the other thing was, so I suppose it was not important. But if you want to hear us talk more about these kind of ideas of good and evil and fun stories and stuff, you can actually go to systematicgeekology.org, where we're going to be launching our other podcast, me and TJ, with a few other guys on October 7th. Because that was just a easy segue into that. So, gotta take what I can get.
By a few other guys, we mean like 6 other dudes and 3 women. So it is a very large ensemble.
You'll hear me and TJ like once every 6 weeks. It'll be great.
It's ideal.
Anyway, it's great. So as you know, we always like to ask our guests to give us a single tangible action that our guests can take. So I wanted to ask you, is there anything practical like, is there a practical way that we can use our creative abilities for church unity?
Yeah, I think creativity, as I just mentioned, is great for challenging assumptions or how we see the world. Um, I can read stories written by people of color, and it allows me to sort of step in their world, for instance, to see their worldview. That same thing could happen with religions, or even just in the same religion, just a different sort of way of looking at things. So I think creativity, storytelling especially, is so amazing at helping us see the other side and understanding people. Um, I don't know, like sometimes like the best way to get to know, I don't know, Hinduism is the first thing that popped in my head. Might not be to read a book on here's what Hindus believe, but to engage with a story by somebody of that tradition and walk through their daily life and understand how it feels to them. That's more authentic, those feelings, than the exact tenets, which, depending on what Christian circle you're in, the feelings thing has a weird relationship with some parts of the faith. Because we like to think we're, people of logic and we make all our choices completely irrationally, when in reality, a lot of our choices are based on feelings. A lot of our life is determined based on what feels good, what feels right. And creativity helps us be aware of that, helps us think about that, and engage in unity through diversity when we can see other people live their lives, quote unquote, rationally, and they have different thoughts and feelings and behaviors and all that.
Right.
Yeah. Specifically, if you want to read a good Catholic story, for most of our listeners are Protestant. The very first church endorsed story was Ben-Hur. It's an excellent read.
Was it really?
I think I read that once. I could be mistaken. Also, fact check me.
Right.
True. I always fact check Josh. Like, we're just sitting in his living room talking about something. I was like, oh, wow, really? And then I look it up. He's right sometimes. About half the time.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, half of that. Well, when I'm in my living room, so a lot of times I'm just spitballing.
Yeah. But
I sound confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think we would see change in the church if everyone started doing that, Jake?
I mean, there have been certain Christian leaders who have said recently in the last year that something like empathy is a sin, which to me, if we're talking heresy, is probably pretty close to that. But I think the development of empathy, especially through creative work, is a great thing, and there's few things more Christian than that. I think the idea of calling it sin was like, we shouldn't, feel like sin is relatable, quote unquote, or something like that. And fair enough, sure, but there are ways to empathize with the human person. When we listen to people and hear their stories and engage in this creative work, art that challenges assumptions, I think we're going to develop empathy. And, I'd rather be in a room with a bunch of empathetic people than I would in a room with a bunch of stubborn, I know what's right and I don't care about anybody else's opinions, and we're
we just call those people Pharisees.
So
but yeah, no, was it Hebrews that says Jesus can sympathize and empathize with all of our temptations and all of our struggles? Yeah. I mean, that's
right,
pretty strong Christian virtue there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable saying that the whole church supports empathy as a feeling.
Yes.
Okay, I like it.
I feel pretty comfortable personally saying that does not go as far as empaths, people who declare themselves empaths. Stop doing that. That's weird. You can't tell how someone feels just by looking at them. That's not true. Like, you might be able to read body language really well, but it's not like a mystical thing. Whatever. Anyway.
And now's the part of the podcast where TJ lists all the things that the whole church does and does not believe.
Yeah. Actually, tune in on Patreon. It's a 3-hour episode. But
yeah, very strict rules here.
Only 3 hours. Wow.
yeah, well, part
He
one,
speed reads.
I do speed read. It's like 700 words a minute. So be ready. But anyway, now we are at the end of the show where we like to put in our God moment segment, which is just a moment in our lives recently where we've seen God, whether that be a worship or a moment of worship or a challenge or a blessing, any of those things. And I like to make Josh go first because it gives me time to collect my thoughts.
So I've been kind of sitting on this God moment, mostly because I think it's dumb. So my God moment for next episode is going to be that I was vulnerable enough to share this God moment. Bobby Bowden, Coach Bobby Bowden from Florida State Seminoles, passed away recently, and it really has affected me. And that's why I think it's dumb, because I don't know the guy. I've never known him. I've read his book, followed his career, but I don't know the guy. But yeah, no, it's had me kind of in the dumps a little bit, and just reading everybody's encouragement from all these different sports teams and stuff, talking about how great Coach Bobby was, has been encouraging, especially because, a lot of times football is a very polarizing thing in our culture, and it's just really cool to see all these other coaches being like, no, that guy actually was the best, though. So, kind of cool, I guess. Yeah, right. That's all.
So I had one in my head until you mentioned Coach Bobby passing away. Jimmy Hayes, longtime NHLer, recently died. He was 36, 37, very young guy. And, the NHL is an intense place. You get a lot of rivalries. But except for like Michael Jackson and a few other very notable celebrity funerals, I have not seen so many people gathered in one place to celebrate the life of one man. And prayers go out to his brother Kevin Hayes, who still plays in the NHL. They're going through a pretty tough time right now. So it's a couple things, challenging, moment of worship. It's just nice to see so many people support him, after his death, people who he had some pretty harsh on ice words and hands with. So it's good to see people unite. But Jake, do you have a God moment for us?
Yeah, it's not related to sports, like most things in my life, but so forgive me. I've been in
coincidence.
Okay, I've been enjoying, getting to know these college students. As I mentioned earlier, they had their senior year in a pandemic, and the world's kind of crazy, and surprisingly, they're still kicking. And this class is super involved in things and just ready to engage with people. And I'm just surprised. Now, and this might be more of a symptom of the whole sort of Gen Z thing, but they're very open about their mental struggles. Many of them will very clearly say, oh, yeah, I have depression, However, despite that, they're still going strong, and they're still engaging in things and getting outside of their dorm and doing stuff when there's a lot of reasons not to. And when the world doesn't look so bright sometimes, especially for our young people who've had to deal with some challenges. And so I suppose it's not a moment, but a series of moments. Just I've been impressed with them. And, I've asked a lot of them, like, what do you think of the future of the church? What does the church need to know about you? And had a lot of good conversations. And there's a lot more hope, actually, than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
Praise God.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people call Gen Z the generation that's too comfortable. Like, that's pretty much just a good thing, really, because they're willing to talk about their problems. Like,
right.
Yeah. Not doing
it's
that.
Like, you're the generation just doing too mentally well.
Yeah. Well.
Oh no.
But Oh, you're the generation that's willing to seek help. Ugh.
Take care of yourself. God.
But
right.
I am Gen Z, by the way. barely.
I hate Gen Z.
I might be
Church
Gen
Unity.
Z,
Yeah,
depending on where you cut off the line.
right.
Yeah.
96,
I'm
I
just
think,
joking.
is coming to be official. So,
Really? Well, I was born 97, so there you go.
yeah, welcome. But if you enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or whoever you want. I recently put out a challenge about whoever shares it the most with proof. I will Venmo them $10, so I will extend that. So go ahead, see if you can outshare everyone else. I dare you.
Yeah, he's
That
including
includes
me, by the way. So good luck. So Jake, where can people go to find all things Jake Doberenz and Theophany Media?
JakeDoberenz.com, TheophanyMedia.com, and the associated social media handles at Jake Doberenz and at Theophany Media. I like to keep it pretty simple
That's pretty
and
straightforward. I like
to
it.
the point. Yeah, check out those places. I'll have a new podcast coming out soon-ish that will be all about the intersection of humor and faith.
What's its
I do
name?
not have a title for it.
Perfect.
I have
It'll be on
wrestled
Theophany
way
Media.
too long with the title. So this will actually be more under my personal brand, Jake Doberenz.
Oh, okay.
Not that Theophany won't be involved, but just how I sort of parse things out. It fits more with my personal brand is going to be very focused on humor and faith. And, I have a newsletter that's already about humor and faith, jakedoberenz.com/email. So yeah, anyway, there you go.
Sweet.
That's where you'll find that.
Awesome.
Cool
I love
stuff.
when you can get the right username, which we've been successful at, but uneventful
so far.
Right. So, some future guests for the show, we've got Pastor Will Rose and Reverend Keno Kennedy will be returning to introduce why we're starting our new podcast with them and 8 others called Systematic Geekology. Go to our website, systematicgeekology.org. Return guest, Pastor Henry Blake, Dr. Seth Postal, academic dean at the Israel College of the Bible and author of Reading Moses, Seeing Jesus, How the Torah Fulfills Its Goal in Yeshua, and Francis Chan, naturally.
Yeah. The last one doesn't know. Everybody else does, but
Hopefully
figure it out.
he doesn't know yet, because that would mean he has rejected us. But thank you.
He doesn't know he's going to be on yet.
But thank you all for your time today, especially you, Jake. You've got a pretty hectic schedule now with the full-time job and Theophany Media and all that, but it's a pleasure to have you. And if you're just listening to the show, hop on over to Patreon to see the last thing we do. And Jake, you want to say something?
Oh, I was just saying thanks for having me on again. Must have been.
That's great.
You liked me at least a little bit. So.
Yeah.